here, it's been called the worst treatment disaster in NHS history. The tragedy of those infected blood supplies given to patients during the 1970s and 1980s. It led to the death of at least 2,400 people, many others still struggling with the side effects of being infected with HIV or hepatitis through the contaminated transfusions. Thousands of victims now to receive interim compensation payments of £100,000. But the chair of the public inquiry has today recommended that that compensation scheme should be extended to family members of victims, including those parents who lost children or those who were orphaned as a result of the scandal. Let's get more now with Clive Smith, who's chair of the Haemophilia Society. Thank you very much indeed for joining us, Clive. It's been a long wait for people for this, and of course a lot of people saying it's not actually about the compensation, it's about the recognition of what's happened to them.
Absolutely. It's 6 years in July since this inquiry was announced, and it's been over 4 decades that people have been dying from contaminated blood and blood products. The scandal itself has spanned over 35 years now, and as you say, for many they've sadly died. And whilst compensation is important for many people, for some it's about recognition, because this scandal is very different to many other national scandals that we're aware of. Not everyone's aware of the contaminated blood scandal due to the stigma of HIV and hepatitis. Many people are still very private about their situations and conditions and still tell lies about why their relatives died from cancer, for example, rather than telling the truth. So it has been an incredibly long time coming, and the inquiry report today from Sir Brian Langstaff really has to be the catalyst for decisive action from government. Sir Brian Langstaff is recommending that compensation schemes should be up and ready and in place by the end of this year, which will require a significant degree of political will, but that must now come. We can't wait any longer.
Any explanation or an indication from Sir Brian, the inquiry chairman, as to why it's taken so long to get to this stage?
He's talked about the fact that any compensation scheme that's set up must be independent of government, and the reason for that is because those who've campaigned and those who've been infected and affected have completely lost trust in government. We've heard from politicians, particularly Jeremy Hunt and Andy Burnham, for example, about how they were actively counselled by civil servants not to meet with campaigners. Yeah. And Jeremy Hunt, for example, talked about the fact that sometimes the state closes ranks around a lie, and that's what's happened here, that civil servants continually told ministers that people received the best available treatment based on the best medical advice at the time. And that clearly was a lie and a myth which has been perpetuated for decades.
Yeah, I'm just looking at what Sir Brian has said in this sort of fairly lengthy update today. Not only do the infections themselves and their consequences merit compensation, but so too do the wrongs done by authority whose response served to compound people's suffering. So one wonders, maybe, we shouldn't just be talking about compensation, but some kind of punitive damages, as you might pursue in a court.
Well, there are various headings of damages within the report, or in relation to headings of compensation that Sir Brian has recommended. And one of those headings includes exactly that, the fact that there should be an added element due to the delay as a result of government delay. And this isn't just the current government or indeed the one political party. This is successive governments over decades. This is not a political point at all. And this is a successive delay over decades. And as you say, Sir Brian rightly recognised that in his report, that what happened to people was awful, but that's been compounded by the delay which has been at the hands of government.
Yeah, the state as such rather than any particular party, as you point out. But he's also pointed up, in terms of the children, saying around 380 children with bleeding disorders infected with HIV. Some of them died in childhood. Their parents have never received compensation.
Yes, that's right. And for many of those parents now, they will be getting old. And the money that would have been of benefit to them earlier on in their lives, when they might have been able to create memories with other family members and friends, etc., that opportunity will be lost. So it really brings us back to your initial point that whilst compensation for some will compensate and help now, for many it's about recognition and acknowledgement of their plight, because so many have gone through this privately away from cameras.
Yeah, and are still suffering, as we pointed out. Clive Smith from the Haemophilia Society, thank you very much indeed for joining us. And, of course, we hope to maybe speak to some of those directly involved a little later as well. Thank you very much.